comes from a root which is Bruhi. Bruhi means Vruddha. If you look at Dhatu Patha in Sanskrit, okay, Dhatu is the root, and it says Bruhi. Bruhi is like the seventh case of Bru Dhatu. It says in the sense of big. Okay, generally
in the sense of
big. Vruddha. Vruddha is growing in the sense of big. Okay. Now big is an adjective. Okay. So when I say big table, and if I say big mountain, the bigness that it conveys is very different, right? Why is it different?
Because of its original existence, what mountain and table would stand.
Exactly. So when big is an adjective, right, it qualifies a noun. Okay. So in one case the noun is table, in the other case the noun is mountain. Okay. So that means the noun will decide how big is the adjective, right? The adjective is used to qualify the noun, so that bigness that is conveyed depends upon the noun that it qualifies, right? In this case, Brahman, Bruhi, is not used as an adjective, it is used as a noun itself. Okay?
yeah, the entire universe or whatever.
So, exactly. So when you say Brahman, you are Brahman, it is what? Brahman is a noun. Okay? What does it mean then? It is bigness, what? Not qualified by anything. Right? So that means in its vision, you are limitlessly big. Limitless. Okay? Big without any limits. So limitless. So this is the starting point of the teaching. And then the whole teaching is leading to make you discover this reality about yourself here and now. Because there is no future promise. It doesn't say that you do this and you will become that. It's not a future tense. Asmi, aham brahma asmi is a present tense. Right now, this is a fact about you. Okay? So the whole teaching makes you see how it is so. So that is the first portion of Bhagavad Gita, which, that's why I'm saying it's not a book of advice. It's not a simple book, oh you should do this and you should not do this and perform your duties. People make Gita into such a simplistic book where actually it is an amazing book. Okay? So this is what is Brahma Vidya. The second subject matter of this book is Yoga Shastra. What is Yoga Shastra? Okay, so generally our minds are preoccupied with small things, events that happen in our life, and they totally occupy our minds, and we think we blow it up, and then we suffer at times because of things didn't happen my way. I get angry, I get frustrated, I have anxiety about future, I have all kinds of sadness at times, So my whole mind is totally preoccupied with my day-to-day activities, and then the impact those activities have on me because of what? My incapacity to deal with or able to control everything according to my wishes. Okay? So now imagine a mind which is totally preoccupied by worries, anxieties, sadness, anger, has to understand I am limitless. Because you have only your mind to understand anything in this universe. Okay. So that means in order to become the person who can own up and to live that knowledge, or to even understand it correctly, you need to grow as a person. Okay. So therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the second extremely important part is what we call Yoga Shastra. How do I grow to be an individual who is more or less objective, is able to deal with what? day-to-day challenges with a certain perspective, doesn't start projecting things, okay? And once I am more or less objective, then I can hold this vision of limitlessness. So therefore, there is one thing which is Brahma Vidya, but second thing is what? Preparing yourself for this knowledge, okay? And that is extensively discussed. And this is why it's not that, okay, now you have to somehow prepare yourself. What do you do for that preparation is mentioned in detail. Okay? So these are the two subject matters of Gita. Okay? Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Now, who is a student who is eligible for this knowledge? So in order to come to that, you all have to introduce yourself and say, what brings you here? What are you planning to get out of it? Preeti, start.
I'm Preeti, and again I'll just introduce her. Whenever I have attended your introductory session, I have attended, and I attended her workshop, and I have really felt good, and I thought that it's making me somewhere to deal with day-to-day stress and whatever small worries you have, you can deal it with in a better way, that's what I felt. And so that's what I want to just take it to, in today's with the challenge.
Okay.
I'm Harish Dave. Actually, after I attended the 5 lectures, and when I was told that there will be lectures again on this, so same thing what I felt while attending 5 lectures, that some ignorance will be removed, and it will add something to my knowledge that what I have been thinking and what it is in fact.
Very good.
So, and I was told, I think before a day or two, that it will be on Bhagavad Gita. So, at our house we regularly chant few shlokas of Gita, particularly chapter 12 and chapter 15. So, I had rather more interest in knowing that what Gita says and why selection of this particular shlokas only.
Yeah, these particular shlokas, just because they are becoming an instrument through which you then discuss everything else, right? It's not like, but yeah, we use these shlokas to be able to tell you the entire Gita.
Right.
They are important, but every shloka of Bhagavad Gita is important. I don't mean to say that only these are important, right?
आप इंट्रोड्यूस करिए अभी अपने आप.
Please caught unaware.
Okay, let
Please caught unaware.
I'm Malay. You don't need to turn the camera. You'll capture me on audio. So I'm here because I attended one of the sessions. I was traveling, so I couldn't attend all of your sessions. But I'm very curious about, as Mona put it, seeker. And so right from childhood, there was a book by Aldous Huxley I read called After Many a Summer Dies the Swan, and that sent me on a long journey. I've been constantly seeking, and I hope I can learn a little bit more here and improve myself. So that's essentially why.
My name is Anil Kulkarni. As a background, I attended your classes. That has triggered it off. But my specific purpose is, conceptually one understands that one is one with the universe. But specifically to deal with interactions with people, and I don't get along with this person, how do I say it to him or her, and how do I maintain the relationship where there are differences? And this is close relationships as well as, at work. And these things bother me in the sense that my ego gets hurt, and I don't like to hurt other people. So it's difficult. It's very well conceptually to say that, you know, all these things don't matter, one day you're going to die and you're going to be nobody. But till then one has to live. How do you deal with it? It's not easy. So, you know, this kind of thinking itself gives you a bit of a relief, in the sense that you say, ye to choti choti baatein hai. Let's think of something. That's the purpose.
So my name is Jagdish Ratnani. I work actually with Surya in what we hope will be a center for spirituality at SPJIMR. And for this particular session, what has attracted me is the quick sweep of the Gita, the select verses that unfold the whole vision. So we've seen it in part. Do the whole book will take you much longer time. This is like for, you know, people in today's jet age. It's a quick jet age solution, and still coming from someone who's done it, from the master himself, Swami Dayananda Saraswati. I don't think there can be anyone today living as a greater exponent of that. So I see this directly therefore coming from him to you and you to me. I think that's a very, very rich source. Love to learn from this.
I'm Munna Nanavati. Unfortunately, I missed the first session which happened, and I regretted it so deeply that it is happening here and I could not go. You know, and therefore I just kept on, you know, the watch of it, that when it's happening next, and I was just talking to Surya sir time to time. Now, if I really honestly say, as Sir Kulkarni sir said, this is one of the exercises which I've been doing time and again. Many places I've gone and attended and done courses and these and that. And I see myself, it's like a snake and ladder. Some of the things you do, you elevate a little bit, again you come back. And I think for quite some time I feel that I've come back. So I need to now again reach to something where, because this is absolutely like a snake and ladder. You go a little and then again you're back. So it's just that. And for some time I had not really done this. I was missing out. And when I heard it is happening with lovely people around, I said, let me go.
See, just to add, one of the issues I face is in seeing interactions between other people in which I am an observer, I am comfortable. And I can see why this one is acting this way and why the other person is reacting that way. But when I am one of the actors,
Yes.
then I say, why does he do this to me? That's my reaction.
It's a genuine confession, like, you know. When it comes
Because
to
that objectivity goes away.
Yes.
So how to bring, that's the quintessence of what you are supposed to become.
If you allow me, I say same thing about ego. My ego is hurt. I can tolerate it. I would not like to hurt your ego. It happens in that case, you are always at the other end, receiving it. So how you can change that? That is also a point.
Yes, so my name is Ratika. And, so I think 2 years back, I reached a place when I was very happy and I was like, is there more, is there more? And a lot of questions started coming in. A couple of things happened in my life where I started questioning why, how can somebody intentionally hurt somebody? Where are we all headed? Just random questions. And that time I started looking at, so I think seeking, as that's the word I'm looking for. And since then I have tried to go on to as many possible classes given the schedule, and I'm a young mother of young kids. So that's when it started. But I personally believe it's the teacher where you feel the connect. And in those 5 classes I felt that there was a lot of those moments. And I told Surya also that, if you're wearing saffron, I'll probably just touch your feet and
If he had been a little more elderly, you
something like that. You have to work on the remain Surya, it's going to be a little difficult. Of course, your image is slightly more, you can be But so that's it. So when this thing came and I heard that possibly a class is going beyond the campus, I was definitely in. And I have my own questions. There are certain things which, it's not that I want particular questions to be answered now. Over the 2 years, I have figured out a few things. But I've also figured out there's so much more I need to know. There's so much more I can learn. I can't even ask. I can't even give limits by asking, oh, I must know this. Because there's so much more I want to just learn. So I'm just here, like a sponge.
Yes.
So this is a thing you guys in critical class. Sponge versus panning for gold. And
Sponge versus?
Panning for gold approach. Just understanding, soaking it up.
That second word.
Panning for gold. So one is soaking and other is analyzing and goes slightly beyond that, but probably another class by Malya. Anyway, that's it. So I'm just here to understand.
I'm Deepesh Singh and I have attended almost most of the lectures in SP Jain. I want to know beyond our existence why certain things, and I want to connect with the real you. There are two different aspects of yours. One is I interact and one is your inner self. So I want to connect with that, So I just don't have a clear idea how, but I feel there is someone inner self which is in you to connect to that. I don't know how, but I feel that exists. So.
Okay. So now, let's start with Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata. Okay, and Mahabharata story, I think every Indian knows. So I don't need to. Generally, I tell in brief what the story is, but I think I can skip it here because I think everybody is familiar with the story, right? So now we are at the battlefield, and Bhagavad Gita starts with, in fact, it's a dialogue between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra is the king, the blind king, who's asking. Sanjaya has been given the capacity to see what is going on in the battlefield. So that means that any dialogue, wherever it says Bhagavana Vacha or Arjuna Vacha, is actually what Sanjaya is recounting to Dhritarashtra. So that means it's in quotes. Okay? So the real dialogue is between Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. Okay? And it starts with the first verse when Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya. What is he asking? He's saying, Dhritarashtra Vacha Dharma Kshetre Guru Kshetre Samaveta Yuyutsamaha Mamakav Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra said to whom? Hey Sanjaya. Okay. He says, hey Sanjaya, desiring to fight, what did my people and the Pandavas do assembled at Kurukshetra, the abode of Dharma? Okay. So hey Sanjaya, he first says at this place. What is the place? Kurukshetra. Okay. But he uses an adjective and he says this Kurukshetra is not just a battlefield, it is Dharma Kshetra. Okay. What is Dharma Kshetra? So that means the war is fought not just for power or anything, it is what? It is based on Dharma, protection of Dharma. Okay. If Dhritarashtra understands that this is not just a normal battle, it is fought for the sake of Dharma, then he also understands that his own children are on which side of Dharma? Which side of Dharma?
Wrong side.
Wrong side, right? So that means that if the father knows that his son is fighting a battle where he is on the wrong side of Dharma, okay, and he still is unable to stop it, what does it mean? Why?
He's in conflict with himself.
Excellent. He is in conflict with himself. Okay, and how is that revealed in this verse? He says, Mamaka Pandavaschaiva. Mamaka is my children. Okay, and Pandava is seen as other than Mamaka. Okay, so that means at times you understand very well, okay, what is the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. Okay, but when it comes to what people who are close to us, what happens? We are confused, right? In the sense that our emotion, our love for the people that we love at times what colors our vision, and we support our kids or anybody that we love even though we understand that the person is not doing the right thing. We are unable to assert our whole sense of justice is.
Or could it be that we are hoping they might change, they might realize? Is that?
But not to this extent, right? I mean, you let your son, in this case, that's why I tell the story of Mahabharata before, because the story goes in a way that there is one wrong after the other, okay? One after the other, to the extent that so many lives, right, are destroyed. So therefore, you cannot just let it, you can give a one chance, you can give second chance, but you can't let it go on. Because if you, then it culminates into this crisis. See, every time what happens is that it is same thing with our own children, right?
Yes.
So if you don't address the problem at that given time and you ignore it, then what happens? It just becomes a crisis at one point, and that is a series of not dealing with problems. Okay? It's not that all of a sudden it reaches that point. It only shows that so many times there could have been intervention where we did not intervene. Okay? And that Mamaka, as you said also, it also can apply to your own self. Okay? You said that when you observe somebody else, okay, it's very easy to figure out, hey, this person is being so subjective. And this person is actually, not acting out of a certain understanding. But when it comes to ourselves, okay, we at times do things which are, out of either anger or frustration or sadness, or sometimes even sense of a little bit of lack. A lot of issues like jealousy and all, where do they come from? No matter how big you are in the eyes of others, right? You could be a CEO, a person that so many people kind of look up to, but you yourself can be so jealous of another person who you think is the CEO of a bigger company. So it has got nothing to do with your accomplishments. It's just to do with your understanding of yourself, okay, and your understanding of the world, and how you interact, right, and how you address all these so-called emotional burdens that we all carry with us to a certain extent.
Can you say in one word, it is due to moha?
So see, when we use these kind of words, then what happens is that moha means, and everybody says, yeah, we are deluded. But that's why we try to explain it more, so we can understand the dynamics of what happens, rather than labeling people and saying, oh, giving some attributes that nobody understands. We just see how human beings behave and why they behave in the way they behave. Okay?
Coming back
So
to what Dhritarashtra, remember you mentioned something called relative dharma last time?
yeah,
There was an absolute and the relative.
yes.
And that's where the roles, as a father versus as a king, perhaps there was a conflict there.
That's a very good point. Okay. Do you think that first of all, Radhika is asking a very, very interesting question. Okay. Saying, is there a conflict between the role of a father that Dhritarashtra is playing, and which other role?
As a king.
As a king. Okay, in fact he himself was not even a king, but let's say that he was the father figure. He himself was not a king. Okay. Do you think that there was a conflict? What is the role of a father? In order to answer this question, we need to ask ourselves, what is the role of a father? What are the duties which are connected to role of a father?
What is right and what is wrong?
Giving guiding principles and values.
Exactly.
Moral compass.
Right? So one thing, you're right, one role of a father or a mother is to support the children. True. Right? But support the children as no other values instilled. Okay? So that means the role of a parent is also to instill certain values in the child. Okay? Make them guide, make them see a certain sense of right and wrong, and what is the nature of loss. We will see that. Okay? What is the nature of loss if you don't do things which are in keeping with her? We will see all of that. It will come. Okay? So we think that just by unconditionally supporting our children, we are playing the role of a parent. But the role of a parent is, if you are playing it well, it's not that. So, but at times what she is saying is very, very true. You have to understand our whole understanding of dharma in the way Gita talks about is highly complex. So we will see a situation, for example, where there can be a genuine conflict. In this case, no. But in other case, for example, you know, when we talk about all that is subject to discussion, so I don't want to get into that, but I do want to elaborate a little bit on what Radhika is saying. I want to give two examples. Okay, one example is of Rama. One can argue till one goes home, right, about Rama's decision of what he did to Sita, because he was playing multiple roles. Okay? He was playing a role of a husband to a wife, and he was also playing role of a king. Okay? And as a king, he had responsibility to show the kingdom a certain values. Okay? So what was his personal role towards his wife? To support her, and he had to be a role model for the whole kingdom, and he had to give certain messages. Okay? So there was a conflict, and he chooses to choose
but
what?
there is a third role also, to do the right thing, even if the praja expects something else.
Yeah.
So there are three issues here.
Yeah. So what is important is that
And there is a
at
conflict.
times there are conflicts, and there are genuine conflicts. Okay? That's what I want to highlight. How to assess, we will see later. Okay? Because the whole teaching of Gita also explains that if there are conflicts like this, how do you assess? It gives you a certain framework. That we will see. Okay? But the fact is that even in recent times, you look at Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? He had started his Swadeshi movement. Okay? And his message to the whole nation was, give up everything foreign. His own son wanted to go to England and become a barrister. He had to choose, right? On one hand, as a father, I mean, he didn't want to do anything bad, right? His son wanted to be a barrister just like he himself had. Okay? But on the other hand, he thought that if I let my own son go to England and tell the whole nation to ban everything foreign, what kind of impact it is going to have? Okay. Then he had to tell what? No to his son. And what was the cost? It was a huge cost. Okay. What is important, that means all that we will see later. How complex is the discussion of dharma. But as Radhika says, that there can be real issues. In this case, because dharma was really sacrificed by Duryodhana, he had employed all the wrong means all along. So therefore, he had no case actually.
According to him, he was on the right path. I suppose.
No, not really. I mean, in fact, there is one point in Mahabharata. That's why I should tell you a story, because otherwise everybody has one's own version of the story, and everybody thinks that they all know what Mahabharata is, and everybody can go on arguing depending upon what they understand. Okay, so just very quick summary of what exactly leads to this war. Okay, it's not something, everything is not relative in this world. Okay, this is where you have to understand that there is something called dharma, and if you don't follow that dharma, there is a cost. Okay, because there are laws operating. It's like when the law of gravity operates and you said, oh, I'm ignorant and I don't care about laws of gravity, then what happens? You go up on the 10th floor and you go say, then the law of gravity doesn't apply. What happens? You will fall. Law of dharma is exactly like that. It is there. You can think that you are very smart and you need not follow that, but what happens? There is a cost attached. The whole premise of Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas is that there are laws operating. Okay? The more you understand the laws, the more cleverly what? You navigate your life, incorporating the presence of those laws in your life. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. Okay? So, let's come back a little bit to the story, because which are the essential points. Just very, very essential points. Okay. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers. Okay. And Dhritarashtra was the elder brother. So, the kingdom, when the father died, had to go to Dhritarashtra. But Dhritarashtra was blind. Okay? So there is a rule that a king who is blind is not fit to rule the kingdom. Therefore, Pandu, his younger brother, becomes the king. Okay? Now, there itself is what? All the seeds of jealousy. Okay? Because this person who feels that I could have been the king has to what? Now give away the kingdom. That is what? Power. Okay? All the name, fame, everything that goes along with power to his younger brother. So there is always a seed that is already there in Dhritarashtra himself. Okay? Now Pandu knew how to handle it very well. So at times he would actually go to the forest and give the kingdom to Dhritarashtra to run it and all that. So there was no real problem till Pandu was alive. Okay? Even though there was jealousy, but it was all kind of hidden. Okay? Now what happened is Pandu himself had a curse, because when he had gone on a shikar for hunting, he had actually killed a couple, okay, and the husband, while dying, he said that he thought that it was an animal and he killed them, and he says that now when we were together, you have killed us, so you will never be able to be intimate with your wife. The minute you are intimate, you will die yourself. Okay. So therefore, Pandu basically had Kunti and what is the other wife?
Madhuri.
Huh?
Madhuri.
Madhuri. Okay. So the two wives. Madhuri.
Nakul and Sahdev.
Madhuri. So he had two wives, but he could not be intimate. Once when he was in a forest, he could not resist, and the minute he could not resist, he died. Okay. After Pandu, then there was a whole question of who will be the next king. Okay. Duryodhana said that I have to be the king because my father could not be the king because he was blind. Okay. But I am the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, so I should be the king. Okay. But according to the Dharma Shastra, the king's son becomes the king, right? And if you look at the age, Yudhishthira was the eldest. Okay, so rightfully the entire kingdom should have gone to Yudhishthira. Okay, now for a very long time, what happened is Duryodhana said, "No, I am the king," and he didn't want to give any part of it, okay, to Pandu's son Pandavas. Okay. Then somehow Dhritarashtra convinced him to give a small part of the kingdom for namesake. Okay. So one little part which was totally barren was given to Pandu's sons, 5 sons, to rule. Okay. What did they do? Strategy. Okay. With their long-term vision, they made it into a highly prosperous kingdom.
If it was not the Kauravas to give away, how did he give a part to Pandu?
Sorry?
The kingdom was not Duryodhana's to give away, right?
In
But
fact,
he
he
had
had
control.
observed it. He was already, when Pandu was in the forest, the 5 kids were in the forest. So in the name of the
Kabza and all.
he took that, yeah. So he actually was there. He was present, he was actually,
So like
So-
the first word, I'm there, so it's mine.
yeah,
Oh.
that's how it happened, right? Then he gave, because even though technically it was Dhritarashtra, he was running it basically. Then he refused to give. Okay. So then what happened is they were given that part, and then Duryodhana got so jealous, even that little part that they made prosperous he could not handle. Okay. So he made so many plans that they were all invited to go to a palace which was going to go on fire. Okay. And then they escaped through a channel. Okay. So he devised many plans to destroy the Pandavas. Okay. Then he could not do anything. So finally what happened? With the help of Shakuni, he called them to game of dice. And Shakuni, he knew that there was what? He is able to manipulate the dice. Okay. So therefore, what happened? In the game of dice, Yudhishthira lost his kingdom, he lost everything. He lost what? His 5
Wife.
brothers, and finally what happened? He lost his wife also. Okay? And that's where came this whole thing of disrobing Draupadi. Okay? And at that time, nobody said anything in the name of Dharma, because he had used his free will, what? To gamble everything. Draupadi herself had to protect herself by saying, she came to the court and she asked everybody the question. She was not a timid woman at all. She was very, very strong. Okay? She said, what about you, Bhishma? What about you, Dronacharya? What about you Pandavas? Nobody can stand up and protect me. Okay? Then they said, no, because they are bound by dharma, you are lost. So you are now a dasi, we can't do anything about it. Then she asks a question. She says, who did Yudhishthira lose first? Okay. So first he betted what? All 4 brothers and himself. Okay. And then he had lost. Then he says, somebody who himself has lost, how can now that person what? Bet me. Okay? He is no longer, he doesn't have the capability to bet on me. But in spite of all of that, nobody came to her help. And then finally, Lord Krishna, who sees the whole picture of dharma in its totality, and not just by, oh, you've taken a vow, so you just have to stick to it no matter what. His capacity to interpret dharma is what? Much larger, with a much proper perspective, and he comes to her help. Okay? So that's where we will see what is dharma. How to assess what is dharma will come here. That's where you will hear it from Lord Krishna. Okay? So that's where somehow she got saved, but they all went to forest because ultimately he lost everything, and they went to the forest for 12 years. Okay? Now there was a condition. Duryodhana said that you go to the forest for 12 years and in the 13th year you have to be incognito. So that means if I find you out in the 13th year, then you have to again go to forest for next 12 years. Okay? So they knew that Shakuni had cheated. They knew that the whole thing was set up, and in spite of all of that, they gracefully left. They did not want to confront, and they left, and they spent 12 years in the forest. Okay? The 13th year, they passed 12 years. 13th year, they went to one king, and they all were, one became the cook, Bhima became the cook, one became the dancer, Arjuna became the teacher of the queen, and that way Yudhishthira became somebody who was looking after the cow. So they all took different roles and they were incognito. Okay? Now Duryodhana was looking desperately for them, so if they are found out, then they have to again go to forest for next 12 years. Okay? What happened is, just at the end of the 13th year, he found them out. But the time had passed. But he insisted that no, at the time, it was not, 13 years were not over yet. So he was then saying, you have to go back and stay in the forest for next 12 years. Okay? And this is what was very unreasonable, because it had just passed. Okay? Then Lord Krishna went as a negotiator. Duryodhana refused to budge. Okay? Lord Krishna said, if you don't want to, give them their own part. We are not asking for the whole kingdom, you can have the kingdom. Even though rightfully it belongs to Yudhishthira, we are willing to settle for that original part that you had given to him. Duryodhana says, no way. Okay? Then Lord Krishna says, if you don't want to give the entire, within that small part, you give us 5 villages, 1 village for each Pandava, okay, and let them stay. Duryodhana said no. Then he said, okay, give them 1 house with 5 bedrooms. He says no. He says, I'm not going to part with even an ounce of the kingdom. If he wants to take it, then he has to fight and he has to take. Otherwise, I'm not going to budge. At this point, it is not that just irresponsibly, they declared a war. Lord Krishna tried to negotiate, okay? But when it failed totally and the whole thing was based on adharma, he said, now you cannot let go. The time has come that you have to respond. Okay? There is a corrupt king, and if the corrupt king is just left unchecked, when you have a certain position to fight it, what is going to happen? It's going to lead to disaster. Okay? So this is where war was declared, because all negotiations failed. Just a small story. Once the war was declared, both of them needed Krishna's help, because both realized that Krishna was not an ordinary person. Okay? So both went to see Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna was sleeping at that time. Arjuna arrived first and he sat
At his feet.
at the feet. And Duryodhana arrived and he sat near the head of Lord Krishna. Okay. When Krishna got up, he saw Arjuna first. So he said that I saw Arjuna first, so he gets to choose. I will help both of you because I am neutral. Okay? But I'll give you a choice. On one hand, it will be me without any arms. I will not fight. Just me, Krishna. Okay? Not even with my arms, and non-fighting person. And on the other hand, my entire army, okay, with all the weapons and everything. Okay, you choose. And Duryodhana said, I hope this Arjuna is emotional fool and he will choose Krishna. Okay. And then I will get all the army. What is the use of Krishna non-fighting? It is useless. Okay. And then I hope he chooses Krishna so I get the army. That was going on in the mind of Duryodhana. What was going on in the mind of Arjuna? Arjuna said, I have all the skills. I don't lack the skills. I have everything. Okay. I have this huge army. I'm really one of the top fighters. I don't need to fear the army. But what makes the difference between victory and loss is one factor, and that is the grace. If I have Krishna, grace. If I have Krishna on my side, then what? I have grace. That's all I need.
What does grace mean here?
Grace means that Krishna stands for Dharma, the Lord. Okay? So the Lord is, we will see what is the nature of Lord. Okay? We don't.
So grace is like correctness.
So
or
the reward that you get for having the right on your side. Okay? So that's what grace means. Okay? So if I have Krishna on my side, that is the deciding factor. Everything else I have already. Okay? So he chooses Krishna and both go extremely happy, because Arjuna goes very happy, he got what he wanted, and Duryodhana got what he wanted. Both were extremely happy, they both go out. Okay? At the time of the battlefield, they both come. Now they are face to face. Okay? In the Gita, it starts by now Dhritarashtra asking Sanjaya what is happening in this battlefield when both are facing each other. Okay? And this is where Mamaka, he understands that it is Dharma Yuddha. It is not just an ordinary Yuddha. Okay? But Mamaka is something that his vulnerability, which is also not only his love for his own children, but the jealousy which was in him, which became what? Unchecked. He wanted to rule the kingdom that he could not rule through his own children. And a lot of us also behave like that, right? Some of the dreams that we have that we could not fulfill, we put so much pressure on our own children to fulfill those dreams. Okay? So it was not only his weakness about his loved ones, but he was almost living his jealousy through them. Okay? So you see, once you have a certain confusion and you don't correct it, it gets loaded. And it gets so loaded that at one point the laws have to correct it. It creates situations which are crisis situations for all of us. The crisis situations only point out things that you have been ignoring which require your attention. And you have no choice but to address them. Okay? So this is what he says, what Kim Kurvata Sanjaya, what is happening. Okay? Now, the response of Duryodhana was, he went to, this is not written, but I will, the verses explain that. It's already 6:45.
Yeah, I just excuse myself.
Oh, you will excuse yourself. You have to go.
I'm just going to change that.
Okay. So can I go on for next?
I mean, it's up to her, no? When she wants.
Oh no, you are welcome to please.
So you have to leave. So we'll.
Around 7 we can.
Around 7 we'll leave.
Is that okay?
Yeah, please. That's what I had already told. In fact, I was not even supposed to be here today. I managed to just come. So this is your home. Please, absolutely sit till as long and have question, answer, whatever. Please.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next 15 minutes, it's
Yes.
okay.
Sorry, there's something to eat. I thought you guys would be hungry when you come back from office. So
Sure.
please.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks.
Okay, so the what Duryodhana was doing was he was going to Dronacharya and he was saying, now you look at all these people that you have to fight. Okay. Now there was in Adi Shankaracharya's commentaries, there is this question that is raised, why Duryodhana goes to Dronacharya and not to Bhishma? At the time of, there was a conversation, the verse is not here, but he goes and he shows that, oh, these are the people that you have to fight and this is how they are. So
the relation also he tells, I think.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
Is your,
yeah,
and you have to fight with
you have to fight with them. Why does he think, why do you think that Duryodhana goes to Dronacharya and not Bhishma? To show the opposition and say, now these are all the people that you have to fight.
He's the Guru.
Okay. One is he is Guru, but what is Shankaracharya saying is that Bhishma, he knew, was a person of resolve. Okay. He had taken a vow and he knew that his commitment to his vow was unswerving. It will not change because he was that strong a person. But Dronacharya, he knew very well that who was his favorite student? Arjuna all along. All along he loved Arjuna. Okay, and all the time his heart was with Pandavas. Okay, so he was not sure about the commitment of Dronacharya to. Somehow he found himself, in this side, but he didn't know the commitment. So what he did, he pepped him up and said, now these are the people that you have to fight against and you be prepared and you give your best. Okay? Because he saw that there was some vulnerability, possible vulnerability on side of Dronacharya. Okay? So when two sides are facing each other, what is going on in Duryodhana's mind? How to manipulate people in the best possible manner so that they give the best to the battle. Arjuna is also facing the other side. He tells Lord Krishna, who is his Sarathi, charioteer, take me, let me view all the people against whom I have to fight. When he sees everyone, what is his response? His response is, the next verse, totally different from that of Duryodhana. Right? What is his response? He says,
sorry to bother you, but
okay. So what is he saying is, the next verse, it says, Karpanya dosho pahatasvabhavaha pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha yachreyasya nishchitam bruhitam me shishyaste ham shati mam tvam prapannam. So here he says that overcome by faint-heartedness, confused about my duty, I ask you, please tell me that which is truly better for me. I'm your student. Please teach me who has taken refuge in you. Okay. So what he says is, he's overwhelmed by the situation. Okay. Where Dhritarashtra saw a distinction between where was his Mamaka, only his own son. What happened to Arjuna? He saw his own cousins as what? His own people. His Mamaka did not stop at 5 Pandavas. Okay. He said, all these are my cousins, my grandfather, my great-grandfather that I love so much, my teachers. How can I fight all these people? Because he did not see it from the standpoint of protection of what? Only those 5 people with whom he identified as his own. Okay. So he says, I cannot fight. Okay. But this is something that everybody very commonly says, that Arjuna analyzed the situation and he said he could not fight his own brothers. Okay. But that was only his first response. Being the person who was very far-sighted in the first chapter, after that thing about that I can't fight my own people, he gives several reasons why he would not fight. Okay? First being my own people, my loved ones, people that I have grown up with, people from whom I have learned everything that I have learned, Bhishma, Dronacharya. But after having said that, he says, not only the people who are loved by me, but all these soldiers who have come to fight on the other side. If I were to win the war, what do I have to do? I have to kill all of them. Okay? So imagine the kind of destruction that is going to take place in the society. So his understanding of the situation, initially it was my people, but after that it was not only restricted to that. He saw the impact of his action on all the different families, all these soldiers who are not even known to him. That was his second reason. Okay. What was the third reason he gave? These are all in chapter 1. Huh? The third reason he gave was, he says, imagine after the war, okay, what would be the society? When all the men are killed, you'll have what? Widows, and you'll have all these children who are what? Without fathers. What for generations, how would the society be? The kind of destruction that will take place, which is not as a result of this event, but its effects in the society for very long time to come, are just too many. Okay? So look at his thinking about his capacity to see the implications of his action on a very long-term basis, not just from the standpoint of my gain and I'll become the king and then I will have all the power and all the wealth and riches. His thinking was completely different. Okay? And the fourth, he said, after having said that, he says, imagine, he understood that there is what we call the laws of cause and effect. If I use my free will to inflict so much pain on the society, what would be the result that would come to me? Right? So that is what
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect is, according to our dharma, there is dharma shastra. Okay, any action that we perform, okay, has twofold results. Okay, so action is a cause and it will produce result. Okay, the results are twofold. One is seen result and the other one is unseen result. Okay, seen result is when I do something which is inappropriate, immediately what I feel not comfortable. There is a sense of guilt. There is a sense of conflict. All that happens, which is universe giving you feedback about nature of your actions. That's why you then feel, oh, why did I do that? Right? Sometimes you get angry and you do something, then you feel, my God, why did I do that? Why did I have to shout? Okay? So there is this immediate feedback where I say, okay, now that was not proper. Nobody else has to come and tell you, you yourself feel it. Right? And there is second thing, which is what we talk about, is don't think that that is the only result. That this action that you have performed will have consequences in the future. Okay? Future consequences, you may not know what kind of difficult situations that you will have to face in the future, but there are laws running, laws of cause and effect. Okay? They will produce something which is difficult, in form of some difficult situation. Okay? So he said that, my God, what kind of consequences in the future I have to face for this action that I have chosen. And having analyzed the situation like that, he says, I'm confused about what needs to be done. He recognizes. Okay? In order to seek answers, wisdom, you need to recognize your limitations. As long as you think you can solve everything, you will not look for answers outside. He found himself in a situation where it was glaring to him. It was not clear to him what needed to be done. And he asks for help. That is what? smart living. When you are confused and you can recognize that you are confused and not pretend that you know it all and ask for help, what? To the source which can have a certain objectivity. This is what we call smart living. He says, you tell me what is the right thing to do. Okay. So that means his first question was with reference to what do I do in this given situation? Do I fight or I don't fight? On one hand, there is dharma at stake. On the other hand, there is all these costs, huge destruction. What is to be done by me? That was his first question. But being a thinker that he was, okay, he had one more question, and that was even more fundamental, okay, and that is in the next verse where he says, Nahi prapashyami mamapadudhyat yachokamocchoshanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatramuttam rajyam suranam apichadipatyam.
Thank you.
He comes to a more fundamental question. He says all his life was spent in what? Acquiring skills. He was excelling in whatever he was doing. He was born as a prince. He had all, he had accomplished many things, and he was multifaceted. He was very good at whatever he was doing. Okay, but at this point he realized, what did he realize? That everything that he had accomplished so far did not give him freedom from sadness, limitation, freedom from lack. And here he says, I don't see now what is the way, what I'm really looking for when I engage in the world is what? What everybody, all of us, what are we looking for? Okay? Freedom from sense of limitation, freedom from sense of lack, freedom from sense of sadness. Okay? So this is something behind all our pursuits. This is what we are looking for. And he says, whether I win or I don't win, I don't see how I can be happy.
Yeah, if he feels that if I win also I will not be happy.
Exactly, because all this.
Yes.
And if I don't win, and if I just leave everything, imagine there is a crisis situation, it is culminating, and then you don't respond and you just run away. You're not standing up to the challenge that is in front of you. You feel useless. Okay? So he sees that I don't see any solution, okay, for this fundamental sense of grief that I am feeling. So now you teach me that knowledge which will what? Give me freedom from this sense of inadequacy. That was a much more fundamental question. One was a question with reference to what I should do now. The other one was, what is the solution to the grief? Okay. And that is something that he says, now I am your Shishya. The situation had culminated in a way that Arjuna became seeker of very fundamental questions, spiritual seeker. And all this while, Arjuna knew Krishna. They were friends for a very long time. He was all the time asking advice and all that. Up to now, he had not asked this question. And what? That what is the solution to what? Human predicament. Human predicament is what? What am I looking for? Basically, and what I'm pursuing. What I'm pursuing does not give me what I'm looking for. So then, how?
Can you just
Yes.
what
am I looking for? Is what is everybody looking for? You tell me, what are we looking for? Behind all our pursuits, happiness, right? Contentment, fulfillment. Okay, and we are so busy working so hard, and all these different pursuits that we have, is it giving us what we are looking for? Right? So he saw that. He saw the fact that what I'm actually looking for and all the different accomplishments that I have is not giving me what I'm looking for. Okay? So therefore he says, you tell me that knowledge which will give me the knowledge which will lead to my fulfillment. Okay? And this is where the one relationship which was what? Cousins turned into what? Guru and Shishya. Why did it turn into Guru and Shishya? Because Arjuna recognized the predicament and asked for knowledge. Until he asked for it, Krishna had no pressure. Krishna did not want to go with this huge thing that I have this knowledge and come to, and I will tell you what the reality is. Okay? You have to ask for it. Once you ask for it, universe provides the answer. But you have to see the need for it. And you only see the need for it where you have analyzed life situations enough to see that what you are really looking for, okay, and all these accomplishments that you have are unable to give you what you are really looking for. Then you begin to ask a question. Okay, addressing that lack directly through spiritual answers rather than through this normal way of engaging in the world. Okay, so that is a turning point from the time that I'm confused about my duty to solution of a fundamental human problem. Okay, we are all not, we don't have this such a crisis situation where we have to fight against what? Our cousins and things like that, right? But where is it that we identify with Arjuna? What do we share with Arjuna? Not the situational problem, but the fundamental human problem, right? That is a predicament of, that's a human problem. Okay? And Gita solves this, it has a key to solve this human predicament. Okay? And because Arjuna had become a Shishya, then the teaching starts. And the teaching of Bhagavad Gita starts with 2nd chapter, 11th verse, where Lord Krishna declares Ashochyanam Vashochastvam Prajna Vadamscha Bhashase Gata Suna Gata Sunscha Na Anushochanti Pandita. He starts with a big bang, okay, by saying that the wise people don't grieve. And you're grieving for reasons which are not worthy of grief. What? If you don't grieve in this given crisis situation, when will you grieve? But what is Lord Krishna's vision? There is no room for grief. So that means there is a huge understanding which has to take place to what? Understand what Lord Krishna is saying. What is that teaching? Why the Panditas don't grieve? All that we will see next time. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.